Department of Public Safety. We'll begin down here to my extreme left and start with introductions.
Tom Berger, Iowa Firefighters Association.
George Griffith, Urbandale Police Department, representing Iowa Peace Officers Association.
Blake DeRucci, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Rob Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff, representing ISSDA.
Dave Cowles, representing PCS providers.
Sally Hall, representing Iowa APCO.
Rob Coppard, representing the Iowa National Emergency Number Association, Iowa chapter.
Rob Dennert, representing the Iowa EMS Association.
Bob Seivert, Shelby County, representing the Iowa Emergency Managers Association.
Jack D'Angelo, Sully Telephone, representing small telco.
Dan Halterman, Frontier Communications, representing large telcos.
Okay, go ahead.
Terry Brennan, Raycom.
Further end of work, Fayette County 911.
Greg Rose, West Safety Services.
John Benson, Iowa Homeland Security.
Mirage, Story County 911.
Urbandale Police Department, representing Iowa Peace Officers.
Tim Aaron, Motorola.
Sandy Morris, Des Moines Police and Fire Communications.
Samara DeGray, Iowa Homeland Security. Helen Torres. Dan Smith, IUB.
I think they've had it too. What? I think they've had it too.
Okay, and do we have anybody on the phone joining us?
Dave, Cherokee County.
Morning, Dave.
Jack Angelo. Red Rose from Jasper County.
I didn't understand.
Could you repeat that again?
Andrew.
Oh, okay.
Jasper County.
Thanks, Ed. Anybody else?
Diana Smith.
You broke up there. Try again.
Spencer Smith, Raycom. Diana Richardson, Raycom.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Diana. Anyone else we haven't caught?
Mike Bryant.
Okay, that sounds like everybody then. Looking for approval of the July 14th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed. Approval of today's agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Okay, State of Iowa Administrator Blake.
All right. Lots of paperwork today. It's kind of quarterly report time and wrap up of the fiscal year. The first document the council members actually received yesterday, so I'm just going to pass it out to the galley here. It's the quarterly report, so I think everyone's taking a look at that. Okay, so just pass that around. The other thing that I have that we didn't talk about yesterday was the PSAP by PSAP breakdown.
2 years.
Thanks. One thing I'll mention about the quarterly reports that I never want to experience again, we made an error in a couple payments. So to recoup that money and offset those costs has been an eye-opening experience. If you received a overage or underpayment, you are aware of it if you're a PSAP. So that's been taken care of and working through that process. You might see some asterisks in the future as we recoup those payments. So just to let you guys know that happened. We've made the corrections in the spreadsheet that kicks those payment amounts out. So hopefully it never happens again. It's been a pain to work through, to be honest, but it's totally our fault. So we're going to work through it the best we can. A couple other things. first, I'm passing around two maps. The first is the traditional carryover grant from fiscal year 2016, and basically the dollar amounts that everyone received that they applied for and then actually paid out. And then the other map, of course, would be the GIS-specific grant that counties received. We did put that in last year's legislative report that we provide to the legislature every January as well. It's public information. Take a look at how we did as a state. The traditional carryover grant we did very well at. We basically spent 89% of the possible amount. So we did really good there. The GIS grant was in its first year. And as we saw kind of a couple years ago when we really started pushing the traditional carryover grants, it sometimes takes a couple years to get that really rolling. Unfortunately, there is no GIS grant for 2017, but 61% of the statewide maximum was spent for the GIS grant. All right, last hand up. This was a follow-up from last meeting. You'll notice one slide is very similar. It's there's the slide that the FCC handed out at my NASNA meeting back in June regarding the states and where they're at with their text to 911 readiness. What the council asked me to do was to pull out, of those PSAPs in other states who are receiving texts, how many of those are direct IP connections? What we're looking to do specifically through the MSRP. So when you look at the back page of that, it shows where states are with that type of text deployment. And one thing I'll note, and it stuck out to me specifically because they briefed it at my NASNA meeting. Maine and Vermont both, the asterisk actually should have been on Indiana. I apologize for that. Maine and Indiana look like they have a lot of their PSAPs receiving text through direct IP. That's actually an error on the FCC website. Maine is working towards that. And Indiana just actually is not receiving theirs direct IP. It's all web browser. So it kind of paints a little bit different picture of just how other states are receiving that text connectivity. There are, very much some states that are receiving direct IP, but the majority are using either TTY or web browser. Another topic that I wanted to bring up, we talked a little bit, it's been a while since we brought it up, but we were doing a statewide imagery project, basically to acquire imagery, be shareable through all the PSAPs, all levels of government, state government, county government, schools, DNR, whoever needs it. Those flights occurred back in the spring before the leaves started blossoming. And the company we contracted with was basically able to fly the eastern portion of the state. If you're in the northeast, it might have been hit or miss. But for the most part, everything east of like I-35 got covered. That imagery that was captured in the first spring will be available around November, December. And then they'll go out and fly again next spring as well to pick up everyone else. If there's any imagery as they're going through what they captured that isn't quality, they basically have, I believe, 5 years to capture the full statewide data set. And again, that'll be shared. Depending on how it's received, how well it's used, we'll look to continue that program to continue to update that imagery. The last thing I have, we've talked about the consolidation tasking that HSEMD has out of the last legislative session. Looking at a couple tentative dates, very, very tentative right now, but looking at probably the end of September to have a meeting both in eastern Iowa and western Iowa, probably on a Tuesday and Thursday. Right now, it kind of looks like the 27th and 29th look like good dates. And that's those meetings where we really want to cast a wide net. It's great to see all of the familiar faces at those meetings, but that reach needs to be a little bit broader for these type of meetings. So that includes telcos, that includes vendors, that includes sheriffs, police chiefs, telecommunicators. So again, we have some finishing touches to put on those and lock those dates down, but kind of expect to see some save the dates or meeting makers coming out for that. We'll also look to have meetings specifically with telcos, wireless providers, and also have some meetings here in the Des Moines area as well. So again, that's going to kind of be late September, early October that we look to do that. Prior to those meetings, look for a survey to come out, basically to kind of get some kind of a baseline or starting point of attitudes of consolidation throughout the state, and kind of a knowledge base of where we're at collectively with how we feel about consolidation, what we think the possibilities are, what discussions maybe you've had previously. So that kind of addresses everything I have. I know I will be talking later when we get to the applications as well. Any questions?
Questions for Blake up here? Okay, thank you. We have the consolidation carryover grants, and I believe that you got at least the last two a couple times from Blake. So has everybody had an opportunity to take a look at them? And if there's nothing further, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
The consolidation grants?
That's correct.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Ready, Sally? I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
I make a motion to recommend to the 911 Program Manager approval of the 4 submitted consolidation grant applications contingent on the adoption of the proposed administrative rules. Let me do that again. A motion to recommend to the E911 Program Manager approval of the 4 submitted consolidation grant applications contingent on the adoption of the proposed administrative rules.
Okay. We have a second. Okay. The motion dies then. Discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
respectfully, the vote today, if we would have taken a vote, and it would have been the emergency manager's vote today to say no. And the reason for that is yesterday's meeting generated a great deal of discussion about the grants and the potential for setting a precedent, and the fact that consolidation was never adequately defined by the legislature. It is still undefined by the administrative rules that are being promulgated. So the action that we would take today, it doesn't have to be taken today. We can defer it for a couple of weeks. We can have a special meeting. Give us some time to go back to our individual associations, bring the arguments and the discussions that we've all heard to our leadership, so that when we come back and vote on these applications, we know exactly what we're doing. We don't want to set those precedents that will be looked at and moved forward with the limited amount of information we have as far as consolidation. The two that really concern me are the purchase of mobiles and portables simply to facilitate the connection to the LMR system. In my opinion, we've enhanced our operational capability by doing that. But is that really what you would consider consolidation? At the same time we do that, we've opened the door for our larger counties who can match the grant to move forward with the purchase of that equipment. And at the same time, that pool of money that is partially meant for an equal distribution back to the PSAPs becomes significantly reduced. The 4 applications we have in front of us today is $800,000, which equals 4% of the total 4.4 million that's available, 8%. Maybe, let me back up. It results in a 20% reduction in the equal distribution of the funds. So at the same time, we're helping out some counties, our smaller counties who really need this money to do the same thing the larger counties are now at a greater disadvantage because their funds become less. So that's part of the discussion. That's the emergency manager's position today. I'm not so sure that if we wouldn't have a special meeting in 2 weeks that position would be different. But at this time, that's where we would stand.
Okay, any other comments?
I also feel the same as Bob does. After the meeting yesterday, there was a lot of opinions expressed and a lot of things that came out of the meeting, and I understand and can see all sides of the issue. I went back to my home and emailed. I didn't feel really didn't feel comfortable making any kind of a vote today unless I pulled my entire officers of NENA and got their take on the thing, on the issue, simply because it is a very complex and issue and has a lot of ambiguity with regards to what's written in the law. I've only heard back from one. In fact, Brenda drove all the way here from Fayette County to be at the meeting today. So I've not heard from my president or vice president or second vice president for NENA. So I don't feel comfortable in making any kind of a vote today. And because of that, if it did come up to a motion, Iowa NENA would also vote no. And again, once I have gotten a chance to confer with my officers, that position could very well change and be on the other side, and in which case I would like to see perhaps this issue deferred 2 weeks out, maybe maybe a special meeting to consider the grants at that time.
Okay. Any other, Mike, you have anything? Right there at that podium in front of you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Mike Bryant, representing the Iowa Professional Firefighters. Before I start, I have a question that I'm just going to direct. I don't know. Yesterday, we had a lot of discussion. I spent a lot of time on the phone with my association, with agencies, and didn't get back from all of them. But one of my questions in the virtual concept or the communication, the sharing between PSAPs that we talked about, aside from compared to the physical part, my own county, Story County, shares currently between the sheriff's office and the city of Ames. It's already taking place. If this was passed as it kind of is with the OR and the virtual side, since they already do it, would they still qualify? Does anybody have an opinion on that for this process?
The way that we wrote the application instructions and guidance, there's no grandfather clause. So the stuff that's already there and in place, you can't go back and claim money or grants for that. That being said, if there's not necessarily maintenance costs or ongoing contracts, but if there's a need to make that more robust, if there's new non-recurring costs, I would take a look at that as a program manager.
All right, thank you, Blake. So to repeat some of the things that Bob has already said, I'm in a really bad situation. I am here representing my organization. Most of those folks are in larger communities, larger counties, larger populations, while some aren't. Some are in some smaller EMS worlds. But I also, in my own mind, I struggle between, for lack of better terms, the bigs and the littles, or the capables and the almost incapables. And we talked about, Dave brought up yesterday that the possibility exists with 22 applications, that would potentially be 44 PSAPs. But my understanding is we didn't talk about the fact that if they looked at just joining the state system, that doesn't include 44 of the current 113 or whatever there are PSAPs. But anyway, whether it's 22 and you pair them up, or 44 and you do them singly, or some other combination of 5s or 3s that chews up the money. So in my world, I look at, well, I don't want to pay any more taxes. I look at Story County and Polk County and some of the bigger communities. And while $200,000 is a lot of money, even in today's world, $38,000 to my home county of Wright County that dealt with the bird flu, and maybe it'll all be better because everybody wants bacon and ham, but nobody wants a hog slaughtering plant, but we're going to have one. So, you know, but if we take 22 times 2 or 44 times 1, that means that while 200,000 is a lot for some, and 38,000 is maybe more important for the 2/3 of the smaller areas. But if we take 22 or 44 or whatever the number comes up, that means those smaller ones, as Bob mentioned, is zero. Absolutely zero. And while I'm not going to argue the benefits of the statewide system, because I see a lot of sides to that, again, I'll come back to, why am I on this council? My reason on this council, in reality, is probably because nobody else in my organization wants to do it. But in my world, my goal is to make it like it is on TV. No matter who you are, where you're from, living here or passing through, when you have a problem, somebody can find you. And I realize all the dead spots are there, but I keep coming back to, I don't want to sacrifice operability for interoperability. And so, that being said, if we voted today, I would have voted no. I'm in favor of the delaying this, not forever, but I am in favor of a little bit of a time. Well, as a fireman, I had to make split-second decisions, being educated of what, to the point that I am. I like all the information in front of me if I have that opportunity. If it doesn't have to be a split decision, I want it to be a longer process so that I can gather as much information and make the best decision, educated and informed, that I can. So that's kind of where I'm at, and our organization is at. And so I'm glad we're taking a little bit more time to look at all the different areas, make the best decision we can going forward. But if it goes like it is, the message is apply early, apply often, because, and the other thing that Blake mentioned from the governor's office yesterday is that whatever way we went was do something that we could be consistent. And I guess I have somewhat of a problem. We can be consistent, but is it really a fair system? What are you going to do? Let's just take the number 44 or 20. Let's take 22. Pair them up. What are you going to do when 5 show up and it's number 20 and 26 on the same day? You know, is it, how do you say who? If we're doing it by first come first serve, how do we determine? You know, because the folks out there are going to pile them in on July 1, I would guess, if that's the way we go, or the first date available. And so how are we going to decide? You know, when 10 come in there's 5 openings left and 10 come in on, you know, the same day. Is it by the order of how we open the envelopes, or draw them out of a hat, or whatever? So there's a system that would work, first come, first serve, but it's not without potentially some flaws in it too. So, for that, I'll sit down.
Like,
Yeah, I guess I have a couple questions then, with what's been said today. Is it the opinion of the board that we should not approve any grants? Because that's kind of what I'm hearing. If a grant was before us today and it was a picture-perfect physical consolidation, what's the argument? Is the argument still big county, small county? We want more to pass through? Or is the argument really here on the radios that is kind of undefined? Because the way I read the code, we have a grant program to administer. If we like it or not, it's the first priority. So it really is coming down to the radios. And I agree, that's a hard topic to crack, but I guess I'm good with a little bit more delay, but some of the conversation kind of concerns me because it sounds like we're not wanting to do a grant program and we don't have that option.
go ahead.
Blake, I would kind of agree with what you said, but we're not trying to defer the grant program or say it's not valuable. I think the wording and the consolidation just needs to be more defined. We didn't have any idea that these grants were coming in and the type of grants we were getting. So I think taking a little bit of time. Mike made a real good point. What if we get 40 applications? And if we just go on a first come, first serve, that 39th application may have been between Shelby and Cass County who want to become Shelby County, Cass County joint. What have we done then? Maybe the thing that we should look at is setting a deadline for the applications to come in and ranking the applications so that true consolidation, or what we would consider true consolidation, would be given a higher priority than simply purchasing radios. The purchasing of the radios, you know, the legislators want us to consolidate, and then they leave it open for us to define that consolidation. If we approve the two applications for the radios, after that, those funds are spent. There's still going to be the same number of PSAPs in this state. There's still going to be the same number of radios in this state. So how have we reduced anything, or how have we consolidated? That's what needs to be answered.
Rob?
I, spoke with Bob just prior to the meeting, before we started, and I said I'm really on the fence on this thing. I see both sides of the issue. I am torn between the issues. I understand both sides of the issues. I think this almost, and I don't know if this would be appropriate or not, but I almost think that we almost need to contact Representative Worthen and Senator Danielson and see exactly what their intent was. I know they said, at least Representative Worthen, help me out, John, said that, asked the consul. Well, the consul doesn't know what's in the mind of the legislature. I mean, we can try to guess. There's a lot of things that are cut and dried and easy to figure out, but the ambiguity that's in this, and especially with regards to the radios, is what everybody seems to be having the issue with, and I don't know if that would be appropriate to contact those two individuals or not, but I'm just wondering.
I don't think it makes any difference because what's written in the code is what is there.
I understand.
And what actually, for me anyways, what their intent is makes a little difference now. Because until it's changed by the legislature again. Anything else? I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Mike?
Yeah, with the forgiveness of the council and for the benefit of the folks probably out here that weren't at yesterday's meeting, it is difficult for me because I don't want to alienate Representative Worthen, who I've mentioned before, I have a lot of respect for, who was actually not in favor of this when he was on two different committees a couple years ago when all this started. and really took the time to become educated. And we discussed this yesterday about the physical versus the virtual. And while I don't know what's in, I talked to Senator Danielson more than I do Representative Worthen. Well, I don't know what's in their mind, and we don't have the luxury of them being here. And this is not against John Benson's, helping to define the physical virtual thing at all, but I never heard anything about the virtual, when I had meetings with those folks. It was about reducing the number of PSAPs, and as I said yesterday, for the benefit of those in the group, part of this problem, I feel, is because this legislation passed at the midnight hour in a hurry. Everybody was trying to get put off and get done. And while I know it's a fantasy world, I write contract language all the time. And while it's most of the time it works, but when I write it sometimes and then I end up in a hearing 10 years later, I'm like, how could this have been interpreted this way? How did I not see to write this different? How could someone else interpret it differently? So I'm always looking at, what if I have a new fire chief, a new union president, a new bunch of members? How are they going to look at this? This should be so easy to read that my wife, who has nothing to do with 911, should be able to read the code and figure out what to do. That's the problem. And we have all these convoluted pieces in 34A that don't build a complete puzzle anymore, because we've changed things as time went on. So while, again, I don't want to alienate those folks, and I'm not trying to buck the system about, ignoring the consolidation that the code sets out in front of us, it's hard to operate within the code that's set out in front of us. That's the reality. As I've learned with legislators, when they don't understand something or it gets too complex, they shut down. They don't want to talk to you. They're not going to deal with it. So I don't think we're doing anything different than what I've experienced for at least for a while here. I'm not saying we don't ever deal with it, but I don't think we're doing anything different than my experiences over the last 30 years being up on the Hill I've had with them. Is when it got too complicated, too confusing, you know what? They just back out, and they aren't going to change anything. Even if you got a great idea, even if they agreed with it at the beginning, if they start hearing too much conflicting stuff from too many groups, they do the backstroke. And I think we're just treading water right now. I don't think we're backing out of our responsibility. While I respect those folks like Senator Worthen, who said, well, let's have the council define it, and made us a part of it. Man, they put us in a real rock and a hard spot, And so I guess I wanted to, sorry to repeat a lot of what we talked about yesterday, but I think there's people maybe listening, I don't know, but at least in the audience that, kind of maybe deserved a little more of the background of what happened yesterday. And I at least wanted to explain why I'm at least thinking the way I am. Thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
And yes, again, for the audience's benefit, yesterday we had a little workshop, and really what sold it for me, and the reason I made the motion to approve these consolidation grant applications or recommend their approval to the program manager, was this sentence after the "or" that talks about utilizing shared services technology to combine systems. This was not limited to 911 call processing equipment, computer-aided dispatch, mapping, radio, logging recorders. I absolutely agree that this consolidation word seems to conjure up ideas of physically taking PSAP A, PSAP B, and creating PSAP C, and it now covers all of A and B's area. I get that. I don't disagree with that. But this second half of this that talks specifically about systems, call processing equipment, technology, that's what these 4 applications are. They're making that step forward to maybe at some point down the road be that physical consolidation where A plus B became C. But I really apologize to Woodbury, Jasper, Marion, and Blackhawk, I think are the 4 that I think we're failing you. I think there's this deadline of December, and you've got an opportunity here to do some things that, shame on us, that now we're putting delays in this, that you're not going to be able to get that done. In fact, I'd like to hear, Glenn, I'm glad to see you getting up, or Ed Roche on the line, that some of these applicants, I feel bad, I really do.
Glenn Sedeby with Woodbury County. I just want to clarify, our application has nothing to do with purchasing end user radios. We budgeted over $2 million locally to purchase new radios next summer in capital improvements. Our application was to bring the Starcom 800 megahertz P25 trunk system to the same platform as the ISIX system, coming from FDMA technology to TDMA technology, which then creates our 5 working channels to become 10 working channels. We had a meeting with Motorola yesterday, and we will be connecting the Starcom system to the state ISIX platform by the end of the year. Since day one, we've allowed every law enforcement officer, whether it was local, state, federal, anybody that carried a gun that was law enforcement that was stationed in our county. If their agency didn't purchase radios, we purchase them for them. So every Iowa State Patrolman, all the DNR, the DOT enforcement officers carry handhelds that we provided. We know as the state infrastructure continues to grow that it's going to tax our infrastructure without being able to convert it to TDMA technology. So that's what our application is for. We have everybody from the 185th Air Force that has radios on our system. We have control stations in Plymouth County, Monona County, Nebraska side. We have Nebraska DNR. We have Nebraska State Patrol, Iowa State Patrol. We have anybody in our area that carries a gun is on our system, provided by equipment that we provided. So we just want to be able to get our infrastructure up to where that we can handle the activity that's going to tax it in the future. Thank you.
Yes.
Question for Glenn. Glenn, how much money are you talking about? How much money are you going to invest in this?
$598,000.
So the 200,000 would net your investment of 300 and some thousand.
398.
Okay, and the reason I ask that is I see that in all 4 applications, that the amount of the investment of the local far exceeds the grant amount that's available. And I think we need to be aware of that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First time at a live one with the new cameras. Is the board considering, for these folks that are trying to do consolidation, proving that, hey, they are really saving money? Because that's what makes sense. If they can do that, then hey, if they didn't do this, what does it cost the taxpayers or all those different counties? If they've proven that they can do that, whether it's through CPE, call logging, CAD, radio, I don't know if that's been defined. It seems that this consolidation hasn't been defined. Somebody mentioned, I can't remember, that it's not fair. I don't think these grants have been fair in the past with the CPE, right? Winnebago has 100,000, as does Polk County have 100,000. So it's never been fair. I don't know how it's going to be fair going forward, but if a PSAP can prove their ROI, whether it's financial or improved efficiencies, some of these grants should be approved. I just don't know if that's been defined, the consolidation. And one more thing about consolidation, are they just limited one time? I heard, apply often and early. I'm gonna do a radio one, I'm gonna do a CAD one, I'll do a CPE. Just doesn't seem defined, especially right now you guys are in the midst of doing there was an RFP for consolidation study. That hasn't even been complete yet. something that needs to be added in there is what I believe. And if these 4 applications that are in there that can prove that they are saving money, they should be approved, in my opinion.
Chair,
Yes.
just starting off, the original motion to approve, I didn't provide a second because I knew that there was going to be discussion that needed to take place, and I'm glad that it did. But what I see here is I see a poorly constructed code section in the Iowa Code. And being in law enforcement, I deal with that all the time. But one thing that I see is that we're kind of the judge here. It has to interpret this code, and there's nothing more annoying to me than seeing legislation from the bench, and that's, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to fix a poorly constructed code, and we don't have the authority to do that, and we can talk about it a long time, but we'll never be able to fix that poorly constructed code. And as I look at 34A, and I look at these applications, I don't see anything that interpreting the 34A that flies in the face of that code. I don't see anything that says we shouldn't approve those. So I guess my point is, I'm not against having further meetings, but I don't see that we're going to be able to accomplish what a lot of people on this board want to accomplish, and that's fixing this code section. We are stuck with what we have, and we do have to administer this grant program. And hopefully, as we do that, the legislature will fix this code. But it's not going to happen now, not in the deadlines that we have. And I just don't see a point in delaying these projects in an effort to fix something that we cannot fix.
Like, did you have something? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Curtis Pion, I'm with the Polk County Sheriff's Office. I'd just like to briefly review a document that went with Jasper County's application in light of some of the discussion about mobile radios and portable radios. Jasper County has clearly identified $251,000 for P25 site equipment. They're asking you for $200,000. So the $200,000 can clearly go to the site purchase and have nothing to do with your mobile and portable concerns. So please keep that in mind. A lot of discussions about add a physical address, joining physical PSAPs together. Polk County is working with all of our regional partners and having discussions across the board with ways to try and save money for our folks, their folks, provide backup services, be able to partner together. And it's not moving one address to another. It's systems. And there may be some hang up on the radios in relation to operability and interoperability. I know that's a bone of contention, but Jasper County's grant to work with us and expand that system doesn't have anything to do with mobile and portables. They're asking for P25 site equipment. That doesn't have anything to do with those other concerns. And so I think the intent is clear that the systems are supported under the code. And I would request that there be a second and we get some movement on this to benefit Jasper and Polk County. And then we can look forward to future endeavors that Polk County is interested in with all of our local partners. So whether they're adjoining counties or those folks to the east that also have the Raycom system, that we're looking and talking with the ways to try and expand our capabilities as our folks travel the state. So just encourage you to not get hung up on equipment in the cars, radios on the hip. This really is for systems. Thanks.
Sorry to hog time. So to show you how I wrestle with this, I have a side of me that's very, very clear. pass it. Let's get the money to 22 or 44 places, and maybe the other 70 people will get zero, will get really excited and get a hold of their legislators, as I've been trying to tell them for years to do, and get involved in the process when they get zero. That's why I'm trying to look at this, what avenue do I go to that accomplishes the best good of the all? Because there's, if, what do you say? Well, use 20, 22, 40, whatever it is, there's 50 or 70 or 90 or 60 or whatever out there that are gonna get zero if it all goes away. And maybe that's the way to get the legislation changed, because I agree with the sheriff. And it may take more than one session to get done. I respect John. I don't want to put him on the spot, but he's at the Hill a lot more than I am. I know in one of my meetings with him, he talked about, the way to write it, to get the definition in there. I guess I, for one, would like to at least hear John's thoughts on, he's not Representative Worthen, he's not Senator Danielson, but he was working with a lot of groups up there to come up with language and a process and to pass this. So I have not spoke with him, and it would be helpful for me, or I would at least like to hear, what John, I don't even know what to ask you for, John, or how to say it, but I guess just your thoughts, for lack of anything better, because as I know, it started out with, we know we're not gonna have one, but can we get by with less than 113 or 17, whatever it is? I keep forgetting the number. And, is 80 the magic number? And I know a lot of it started out to be with the physical part, and then it kind of developed into this other part. So I guess I would at least request that, if you would.
Filibuster.
John Benson. I work with the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. I'll kind of back up and go through I've seen a variety of questions that have come forth. In terms of, and Mike hit upon it, what was the legislative intent? If you were to call Gary Worthen right now and ask him what his intent was on consolidation, his answer to you will be that he wants the council to define what consolidation should be, at least in terms of this grant. Now, so, because I asked him that question point blank. I said, Gary, if we get into a tough spot and define it, I said, I need to know what your intent was. And he said, my intent is that the council will help define what consolidation looks like in this state. He says, because I don't understand it. So you guys can't shirk the duty and run away from it as much as you'd like to. The next part that goes along with it is that please keep in mind that the way that legislation was written, it is a one-year process. They will be looking for input from the 911 community as a whole about what that should look like when they come back in January. And that's that will piggyback in part with the consolidation study that will drop on them. Are we 1st of January, 15th of January? Which you guys will help develop. So that will all get thrown on the table as well. So the challenge you've got in front of you, and when the legislation as it was moving along over the course of the entire process of the 4 months they were in town, we recognized that we were going to have some type of problem on the back end of this when it came to consolidation. Because when the discussion initially started, it was strictly physical consolidation. To which my guidance to them was, there may be one place in the state that might happen, and that's it. I said, other than that, you're not going to make any headway in what your goal is. But technology does allow you to do some things. So one of the things we have to look at is a strict constructionist view of what that law says, what Chapter 34A says. Even though it's poorly written, as most Iowa law is, it talks about, in the consolidation, it talks about two or more PSAPs coming together, and I'm going to talk about specifically the shared services coming together to do shared services. Now, I haven't looked at the applications you have in front of you, so I can't provide comment on those, how they fit together. So you do have some options available to you with the understanding that this is strictly a one-year program. We will be coming back to this very same issue next year at this very same time, talking about doing rules once again. I understand that there's a desire inside of the community to get it correctly defined this time. I don't know if we can get there. I think upon further review, and the farther we are removed from the legislative session, more time you've had to ingest the language that you have in front of you, I think you recognize that it's not a simple fix. So we have to work on that. And I know the legislature will expect this body to provide information to them about what it should look like going forward. If you do not satisfy that need out of the legislature, that's your problem. That will not be our agency's problem. That will be you as a council's problem. There is an expectation that you will bring forward some ideas on how to make this thing work right. They will be leaning heavily upon all of you that sit on this council. I don't know what the answers are at this point. As I looked at the language, as more Blake and I talked more and more about it, I can argue that you should fund all the radio stuff. I can also argue that you shouldn't fund any of it. You know, you got 3 hours, I can walk you through it and we'll get a whiteboard out. So it's, and I enjoy the statement of fairness. It's never, there's always been a hint of socialism inside of the 911 system. It was when we first rolled out wireless, it was that way too. There was a recognition that there were people that were there were PSAPs far more capable than other PSAPs. Well, us as an agency, our responsibility is to get it deployed across the entire state. And does that mean we have to make some unfair decisions? Yep. Welcome to the race. That's how it goes. And we're kind of in that same position again. We're responsible for doing it. And does that mean it's going to be equitable, depending on how you define equitable and fair? I can't sit here and say that it will be. But we have to figure out how to do it, and we have to rely upon your guys as the experts in the community. You are our ultimate sounding board. Which I think is kind of unique in state government. I know other places, other agencies do have boards they work with, but will routinely ignore them. I think since 1998, I think we've only gone against the council maybe once, yeah. So, you know, that's not a bad track record, I don't think. Now, Bob and I might go out in the parking lot and have a go at it sometime, but that's okay. But that's where we sit. And we recognize that it's some pretty questionable language. Process-wise, we were not able to get on the agenda with the Administrative Rules Committee to get the emergency rule adopted. And in hindsight, I'm actually glad that's happened now based on the discussions you guys have been having. They will meet on the 13th. And so we do have the capability of making changes to that rule. So as you guys are having your discussions, I know you had some discussions about clarifying some things inside of the rule and things like that. Completely fine with doing those type of things, not a problem. If we do want to use the rule to also further define consolidation, to put some more specificity behind the language, we're fine with that. Let's have the conversation. In fact, we can make changes of that right up until September 12th, the day before they meet. I would prefer to have it prior to that, but we will have the capability of doing it. We'll go through the meeting on the 13th. I'm assuming we will get their approval to do it. I'll walk back to an office, I'll hit a send button, and then the rule will go into effect and we can start paying the monies. That's process-wise where we're at. So, but I just wanted to stress that please keep in mind that this is a one-year deal we're talking about. Have to keep that in mind. They did that very intentionally. They put a one-year time limit on it. So we would come back next year to have this essentially the same discussion. We'll be a little bit smarter about it, but we'll be having the same discussion with the legislature next year. So since I'm standing up, does anybody have any questions? David.
I guess my hang up
Push
is.
the button. Did it go green?
I guess my hang up is the 4.4 mil. And that leaves 12 or 8.4 mil unaccounted for, other than in a hangovers account. We cannot touch it.
Correct.
And to me, that's wrong. It's our money to start with. In other words, if I say that this consolidation goes for 22 PSAPs and we use up all 4.4 billion, and we get a bunch more, we've defeated the process of what consolidation is supposed to do. If we had access to the 8.4 mil, we could grant them that money. That's my big hangup. I think that, consolidation as far as technology, it's going to come. It's probably not going to save a bunch of money that everybody expects, but it will make for a more efficient 911 system. But there again, that money was collected specifically for 911 services. And that's part of the 911 services.
And I think most of you are aware of this, that by capping the limit on the carryover grant in terms of what can go out the door on the back end, that was a very conscious and cognitive effort by the legislature to create the situation you're speaking of, that there is money in the fund, and there will be money in that fund come July 1st, and it will be 8.4 plus a little interest. That was the number they wanted in there, and that was a very cognitive effort. Do most people understand why they want that money there?
No.
The reason they want that money, quite simply put, is they want to have another possibility at a parachute for the LMR system. Similar to what they did in year one, similar to what they did in year two. Now, in talking with the legislature over the course of the session, do they want to come back to the 911 fund to pay for the statewide LMR backbone again? Partially incorrect. They would prefer to do it out of another funding source, and that was evidenced by the beginning of the session where they had multiple bills which were pulling funds from ending balance. They were pulling funds from the RIF fund, a variety of different places. But as the session went along and the way the budget fell together, both on the revenue side and the expense side, those options evaporated and they came back. Their intent is to find another method of paying for it, but they want to have a parachute on the back end if something bad happens again. Now, having said that, our department, we will not be, our point with the monies that are sitting there is similar to what David is talking about. Those monies are designated toward 911, and if we're going to talk about consolidation efforts, typically that's going to take some capital up front to do it. Specifically, if we're talking about folding the wireline network into the wireless network, there's going to be some capital things that are going to happen. We have a funding source to do that. We do not need to go back to the legislature and ask for additional funds. That's what we would prefer to see the money used with. We've been having that discussion with the governor's office since the close of the legislative session. That we're going to come with a plan, and it's going to talk about spending money, and we have a funding source to do it. Let us do our jobs. As our department, that's what our marching orders are going to be as we work with the governor's office on the budget. But you have to be fully aware of why this was set up as a one-year program on the carryover side.
That said, if indeed they decide to do something more and fund the LMR system, that takes the process of what it can be used for out of the equation.
Agreed.
And I guess to go back and request an increase in the amount of surcharge collected is going to be kind of hard to pass.
Agreed.
So my hang up is still, let's use it for 911, and I guess we can hopefully tell the legislature one way or the other that we'll spend it the way it's intended to be spent. I don't know how you do it.
Well, you pick up a phone and you call your legislator. And then you walk up to the building and you talk to all the other ones too. That's just a suggestion.
Dave, I have an idea. I make a motion to, what? Can you hear me now? I make a motion to recommend to the E911 program manager to disperse the remaining and existing funds from the operating surplus equally to each PSAP for the following costs. A,
I'll send this to you. Costs related to the receipt and disposition of 911 calls, including hardware and software for an Internet Protocol-enabled next-gen 911 network as specified in the Wireless NG 911 Implementation and Operations Plan. Or B, local costs related to the access of the statewide interoperable communication system as defined in Code of Iowa 29C.23.
Second?
I'll second that.
Which funds were you talking about?
This is the
8.4?
This is the 8.4 million that's remaining carryover.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to thank Mr. Benson. As I said, excuse me, I do respect John's opinion. I've known him for a long time, and his explanation is very helpful. And I'm really not trying to drag this out because I do have a flight to catch to go to Las Vegas for 8 days for the International Association of Firefighters, 3,000 crazy firefighters drinking a lot between from all across the United States and Canada, of which I will toot my own horn. I'm getting one of 16 leadership awards out of 300,000 people. So my answer is, I guess if you stick around long enough, they recognize you've done something, right or wrong, good or bad, or agree or disagree. With what Mr. Benson has told us, Mr. Chair, I would suggest two things. One, in as quick as we can, whether you want to do this as a committee or as a whole council, but we need to decide if there's anything we want to change before the September 13th deadline in those emergency rules. Get the right terminology. And that's at the pleasure of the chair or the council. It's just a suggestion. More importantly, or as important, I guess I'll put it that way, we need to either decide if the council or a special committee needs to be formed to prepare for the next legislative session. Thank you, John, for repeating what I've said. The place to get things done is the $20 at the Hot Dog Brat Beer Fest at your people who are going to be elected in November. Now is the time to do it, not January. It's too late when you go to the Capitol. Now, you know each one of them. They want you to come to their backyard. You get to drink beer with them, for heaven's sakes. Cheaper than any place else, you'll get to drink beer. Obviously, you can tell I like to drink beer. That said, we need to figure out how to coordinate. Again, I'll repeat, I know that the state employees are somewhat limited, but we've heard it. They're trying to do some of the things we just passed a motion to do. We need to figure out how we build this effort to get to our associations, our legislators, our lobbyists, on how we accomplish the best possible outcome from the next session. To fix as much as we can, to get as much as we want, we need a consolidated effort to get that done. So with that, I'll leave it at the pleasure of the chair. If he agrees with those two processes that should take place on how we move forward. Thank you.
Is anyone interested in trying this again individually? Was there any hang up there that they were all four together?
I think that was part of the issue, actually, so that they were all four together. I think they should be approved individually on their own merit.
Yes, you can.
All right. Let's do them alphabetically.
Rob?
Yes.
If you don't mind. One of the things, no. Yes. One of the things I'm looking at is or what I hear, and of course I'm just an officer that carries a gun somewhere, and I don't hate legislation, but I also, sometimes try to interpret it the best I can. I think, I think the intent and what I heard from Mr. Benson, and I appreciate him coming up, is that, you know, I don't really want to define stuff right now. I mean, it's not, I don't think we could sit here and delay on this. I think that we have people that have projects. I'd just like to go ahead and reinstitute what you just said, you know, you do your motion and you can shoot me down to go ahead and pass the 4 of them. That would be my motion, just to go ahead and get it done, get something done today with those grants so these people can get going. We can revisit legislation, we can rewrite it, we can act like legislators later if we want to. And trying to rewrite some policy that no one likes, no one's really, I mean, not everyone's gonna be happy. So my motion right now would be to redo your motion to pass the 4. And if I don't get a second, that's fine. I just would like to get off this and just get these grants going.
Okay, well, the first thing is you've already began a motion,
Sorry.
didn't you?
I don't think I started, well, I just asked.
Oh,
So if
okay.
he's making the motion for all
Okay,
4,
just want to make sure that we were not.
I'd second it.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to approve all 4. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I thought,
No,
we
discussion.
have some discussion. I
Yeah.
thought we were going down the path of approving them one at a time.
Well, this is what he brought up.
Right, I was asking if people were interested in that. George then wanted to say something and now has made this motion. So there's a motion and a second.
So the motion is essentially the same as what you originally made.
That's the way I'm looking at it, yes.
Mr. Chair, could I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Sure.
Mr. Coppert,
Iowa Nita votes no.
Sheriff Rotter,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Bryant,
No.
Mr. Berger,
Yes.
Mr. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Dennert,
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo,
Yes.
Mr. Halterman,
Yes.
Mr. Kaus,
Yes.
Ms. Hall, yes. Mr. Chair, affirmative vote.
Okay, the motion has passed.
Oh, but Miss,
Oh.
did I not? I'm sorry.
No.
Mr. Seibert,
Well, thank you very
I'm
much.
sorry.
At this time, and it's regretfully so, the Iowa Emergency Managers Association will vote no.
I apologize.
Okay. So the motion passes, all 4 current applications are approved. Is there any other discussion on this particular area that anybody wants to bring up or in the audience? Gary?
Terry Brennan, Raycom. Rob, I appreciate the motion you made earlier about the additional $8.4 and making that available to all the PSAPs. Conceptually, I agree with that. I want to support that. You identified that could be for 2 things. One was like the paraphrasing, but the next gen 911, and the second was for participation in the state LMR radio system. And I think that if you are defining and choosing that the way for locals to share radio technology is and only is to join the state system, I think then you are alienating a lot of local, regional efforts for people to consolidate those. And so that's something that I would ask for you guys to reconsider, because I think, Polk has some initiatives going on. Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, and Iowa City have regional efforts going on. And frankly, there are probably a large number of smaller counties that, sharing VHF conventional systems might be a way for them to accomplish the same objectives, rather than trying to choose and or dictate that the way and the only way that this board or the state is going to support is if you join their network. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience?
Glenn Sedeby, Woodbury, I just want to thank you for the consideration of our grant application. Thank you.
I guess I have a point of understanding. Yesterday, when we talked about approving these grants, it was contingent upon meeting the rules of the emergency rules in September. That part was, I don't think, and I'm not being critical, but what wasn't in George's motion, so I
It
guess.
was my motion to
Just
redo
reconsider.
Rob's motion, so it was
Okay.
contingent upon the
The
adoption
passing of that, okay. I just wanted to be clear. So that said, what happens if the language changes that could potentially happen between now and September 13th would, I'm not sure the right word, I'm struggling, not be in line with the
Well,
application?
what was passed today was in good faith based on what we know now.
Okay, so it's potentially.
Right.
If the language changed drastically, I mean, I'm doing this for my understanding, but also for the benefit of the 4 applications, that they don't move to a point today or this afternoon before the 13th, right? Because it's potentially possible that, maybe not likely, but it could exist that something could change in the administrative rules that would void the application. I don't know if that's the right word, not be in alignment with. So what I don't want to get, I want to prevent a bad situation from somebody doing something this afternoon, we'll just say, because these were approved, and then all of a sudden, something happens on September 13th or before that changes what's allowable. Now we got a bigger problem. I'm all about prevention.
Well,
so I think that said, my suggestion would be is that these 4 applicants don't do anything till September 14th. But
Chair, if I understand it right, though, the big thing we're waiting on is the disbursement of money cannot go out the door until the rules are adopted. The chances of the rules interfering with the grant are
right.
very minimal.
That's what I was going to say, is that the letter that I drafted on behalf of the council is to support what's already reflected in there, which at this point in time would not preclude any of these applications we just approved. So I don't see that there's going to be an issue at all. But in any event, Glenn.
It's Woodbury's intent. We're going to move forward. Just because of the discount we would get from Motorola to do it while they're doing the state LMR, while they're touching our sites. So our intent is going to sign a contract. I just don't want to make sure that come September when these rules, if they're approved and the grant is totally approved, that we're not going to be rejected because we signed a contract prior to that date.
I'm not overly concerned about that part of it unless you are.
I'm not concerned about that.
I don't think so.
I would echo your sentiments earlier from the letter you drafted.
Because it's a $90-some thousand discount for us to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the chair's opinion that the grants were approved, and
we understand if something happens, the dollar's on us, but we need to move forward.
Right. I mean, and our approval again of the grant it's an approval, but it's the program manager and the director that have the final say, and I don't see that that's not.
I just don't want a date and a signature.
Right.
Throwing a red flag up.
Yeah.
Just want that up front.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Anyone else? Yes.
Could I ask John a question? I'm looking at the fiscal note that's dated in April of 2016. And what I'm looking at is the carryover amount at the end of 2017, it's 5.4 million. And then it's brought forward into the fiscal year 2018 total revenue. And am I correct in that the amount that goes to the PSAP is based on only the revenue and it doesn't include the amount brought forward? Okay, and having said that, then you look at the grant amount legislated or available. And we're in 2017, it's 4.4 million, and in 2018, it's 6.5 million. Now, moving forward, it really should have probably been 4.4 because that's what exists. My question, I guess, is if 4.4 is the cap and the amount coming back to the PSAP is fixed, where is the rest of that money going to go? Is that going to go to contribute to the 8.4 million? Or is that going to go into the pot for total projected operating surplus?
So what Bob's referring to is during the legislative session, this will be kind of a history lesson on how the legislature settled on the dollar figure that ultimately the PSAPs can receive out of the carryover. Is it 4 or 4.4, whatever the number is? Okay. Where that dollar figure comes from is when you look at the revenue stream, which we anticipate at $28 million, and then you look at the expenses that we have to operate the network, the 60%, the increase to the 60% for the pass-through down to the PSAPs, and then so you take all of your expenses versus your revenue to get to that $28 million figure, you're left with 4.4 million. It ends up being about $4.4 million. Now, is it going to be are we going to generate precisely $28 million in the year? Yes, no, maybe. But that's what it works at. So that dollar figure actually came from Senator Danielson, whose intent was that he would spend between 99 and 99.5% of the revenue received within the fiscal year. So essentially what he's doing is for this year only, and this is why I stress that it's a one-year deal, is that the state anticipates receiving $28 million. They anticipate spending 99% of that money. So when you put all of your expenses plus that 4.4, that ends up being about 99% of the revenues that are received inside of the fiscal year. For monies that are received that are in the account prior to that, it does not account for those, and it does not have us spending those monies that are sitting there. So that gets back to the theory that we had before. We ended the year on June 30th. There is a dollar figure in the carryover amount, or in the carryover fund. June 30 of this year that we're in right now, there will be roughly that same dollar figure in the carryover fund because all of the revenue that's generated in this fiscal year will be expended out the door. So essentially we have 1 year where we're just holding that account there. So that's where it works from. I think that's kind of getting to the question that you're asking for, is how did it get there?
Not as much how it got there, but it seems to me that we're losing two million and some dollars, that it's got to go someplace.
It goes anything that's beyond that will go into the larger carryover. So think of it this way: that you've got a fiscal year 17 carryover that we're working with right now, which is the 4.4, and then you've got, I'm going to say, your prior year's carryover. So anything that doesn't get spent inside of this year is going into the bigger fund, for lack of a better way of saying. So that money's not going to disappear. We just can't go spend it willy-nilly. We have cleanly defined instructions inside of the Code of Iowa right now how we spend that money inside of this fiscal year.
So then, while the cap this year was set at 4.4 million, because of that carryover and the funds available, then would the legislators be voting on that cap every single year based on clearing it out to 99%? Is Is that what you're thinking?
Would I okay, could they? Yes. Do I think they should do it that way? Absolutely not. A year-to-year process is a disaster in my mind. And for Blake, it's a pain in the back end to administer it that way too. No, our intent is that we view this as this fiscal year as a stopgap to get some of these larger questions put on the table correctly. Primarily long-term funding of the LMR system and consolidation inside of the 911 system. What does that look like? So you've got those two things that are going to come together in this legislative session right now. We would prefer that we come out of this next session with a long-term solution, not a year-to-year solution, that we've got long-term answers. So both processes can move forward without this dark cloud hanging over everybody's head of how we're going to pay for everything. I think I made it pretty clear what our view is, that we prefer, since we're responsible for the 911 program, we would prefer to have the long-term answer inside of that program to take care of that program. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Close.
Then that's as good as I'm going to do today.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Only gonna give one little last request here for those that are still questionable, at least as far as those representing their organizations. Please try and get that worked out with them before we get back here in September, because we got 4 more months left for applications. And right now, the way the law is written and what's going to be presented and then hopefully adopted by the administrative rules, at this point in time doesn't preclude anything that was already been applied for. So as was mentioned yesterday, if we don't make these decisions on how this money is going to be spent, it will be made for us. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay. We'll move forward. Technical advisory, anything from Dave or any of our telcos? No news? No news? Okay. Interop board, Mr. Allen.
Morning. 3 topics. The first one with the board's working on, as you know, one of our primary missions is FirstNet. And consistent with that, we have a program called WISE Schools that was just rolled out. And the 3 communities involved in that WISE school project are Norwalk, Martinsdale, and Marshalltown. And what will happen there is that we're attempting to replicate what we perceive to be how FirstNet will work and doing it at high schools or schools. And the purpose of that is that police, fire, EMS can roll up, upload, and download at extraordinarily high speeds, broadband data, at very small areas like around the parking lot of the school. So it's a very tight circumference. The further you get away, the worse the bandwidth gets. So there's a real value to be closer to the school. And with some of the things that are going on in the public, we thought that made a lot of sense. It gives us an opportunity to kind of see what this stuff might look like in real life and how it may or may not be used, what departments may start thinking about with regard to the software packages and things like that they use. So it gives us a pilot test. Now, the good news is that was rolled out. Kind of the bad news is that there's now a long line of people that says, hey, me too, how can we do that? How can we get to be part of that? So that's good. It's building demand. But we're sort of excited that Iowa's out on the front end of some of this testing and thinking about how FirstNet might be used in a real world application. And we're also hopeful that it will help drive some of the technology that might come into Iowa from some of the vendor community to come into some of the vehicles. That just may happen. We can't promise you that, but that's some of the things that some of the conversations that are beginning to take place. So that's known as WISE School. Governor did an announcement. There was a press release. It was widely attended and seems to be very widely received and warmly embraced at this moment. The second topic is the LMR system, ISIX. There will be a detailed design review meeting held on October 11 and 12, a 2 all-day meeting Right now it's scheduled at Orem Pape, depending upon how many people come in. I suspect we probably will have to move to a larger venue. What does that mean? Well, what that means is anytime you put together a large system, there's lots of moving parts in how everyone gets organized and standardized. And for lack of a better term, that's what the detailed design review portion of it will work. How the radios get programmed, how they fit in the system, how does it work if it's here, what are your interoperability groups, what are we going to have? So there's just a lot of moving parts. But again, October 11 and 12, so if anybody wants to schedule that in, if you're interested in attending, we'd love to have any and all of the council members in attendance if they are so inclined. The third topic I want to bring up is training. As many of you know, Tom Buckman chaired our training committee and did an extraordinary job. Tom really got out there and worked with DHS. There's a thing through DHS called technical assistance. Under Jim Bogner and under my watch, we have been, and with the help of our regional representative, Jim Lundstedt, each state is afforded 5 opportunities for training. Iowa has historically gotten 5 and has done real well. The challenge is that with the loss of Mr. Buckman, I don't have the bandwidth to pick up his space, and we lost an extraordinarily forward-leaning chair. The board rules require that the chair of every committee be a board member. And so we had some trepidation by people just because they struggle with the same problem. They got full-time jobs. We are fortunate that Denise Pavlik from Scott County has come on our board, and she has agreed to take on the training committee, and Captain Walser has agreed to be her vice chair. And so we feel like we've got extraordinarily strong training committee moving forward. And so for those of you now understand, a lot of the money coming out of Homeland Security now is IT security, NG 911 driven. So the partnership between Blake and his team and me and my team are going to get a lot closer. One of the grants that we got last year had to do with NG 911 and kind of what does that look like as we move forward. To be clear, interoperability is not trying to get in the 911 lane, but that's where the money comes from. And we're the ones that actually get the opportunity to apply for it. So the training committee is made up of a wide swath of people, largely out of the dispatch community. And they're looking at things that they see have value added in their community. And so that's how we end up in this spot. So we look to be having that training sometime in September. And so we'll probably be leaning on some of you on the board to help us get the message out and make sure that. So I want to put a plug in for Blake. He worked with the TA folks, kind of took a look at the slide deck to make sure that it got a touch for what was going on in Iowa. I clearly don't have. I'm not in that tightly, and so that's something he and Samantha work with on a regular basis, and we're really excited that we're going to have an opportunity to bring something like that here to Iowa. The last topic I want to bring up is we have a couple of new board members. As I mentioned, Tom Buckman had retired. Public has appointed Randy Smith to replace Tom. We're looking forward to that. He will do a great job for us. I've had a couple conversations with him, and so we're excited about that. Chief Dave Lorenzen from DOT will replace Bob Uni. Bob Uni will be perhaps hanging around and helping us with some things. As we all know, he was pretty much our senior statesman and the thought of reason on many different issues. So we're looking forward to Tim continuing to stay engaged with us, and we're excited about the opportunity to have Chief Lorenzen at the table to help us bring the perspective of DOT too. We are, as some of, as Mike pointed out, we are the interoperability board, but you pretty much can't talk about interoperability if you can't get operability. You've got to be able to talk before you can move to the next step. And so we're trying to find that healthy balance that's necessary for both of those to occur. And from our perspective then to leverage interoperability to the next level so that those in Iowa can talk to who they need to talk to when they need to talk to under the definition that we've got in our administrative rules. I will now entertain any questions from the council. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And I will say on that WISE, as that expands, one of the byproducts of that that's a benefit is that public safety presence at our schools. I think that's just a great program as it grows. Okay, we don't have any items for discussion, no unfinished business. Any travel requests that I weren't aware of?
I did have one item for the discussion.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't jump in there. With regards to the outreach program, I will be meeting with a person from the office of, and you're gonna have to help me out with this. Is it OCIO, the people that have?
Chief Information Officer.
Okay.
Mhm.
With regards to a website for the 911 console and for general 911 in Iowa, an official 911 website. So that will be taking place fairly soon. Also looking at things such as outreach, like for instance, we've got the streaming that's going on right now and the conference bridge, things like that. There, we are going to be recording, or this meeting is being recorded in the back room, and I will be uploading that. We now have temporarily under a Gmail email account, but we have a YouTube channel for the Iowa 911 Communications Council. So the videos for these meetings, other meetings, such as when I've recorded Blake's training meetings, things like that, those can be uploaded into that particular channel for viewing for the 911 community. One other thing that Rob Dennard and I kind of just briefly touched on this morning, and I kind of want to see what the consul's viewpoint on this is this room is a very nice facility to have these meetings. We have the live streaming capability, which gets our message out that we know there's a number of people that are viewing this meeting. There's a lot of people that are listening in on the conference bridge right now that can't physically be in here. They can't take the day to drive in and come to this meeting and then drive home. That takes, for some people, over an 8-hour day. Brenda, I don't know how many hours it takes you to drive down here. 3? I was guessing 5, but you know, she's putting in a full day to be here today. So with regards to this room, there is one item that has a little bit of need to it, and that is the addition of more microphones to augment what is currently in this room as far as the microphones are concerned, the ones up here on the dais and et cetera. And I would like to look at seeing what it would take, working with the city of West Des Moines to augmenting their current system a little bit to help our needs out so that those that are viewing and listening have a better chance of hearing what's going on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The Essex Board has also asked the city if there were anything additional that they needed in this room, that it was about a $500,000 upgrade, that the cameras, the backroom equipment, the audio equipment. I don't believe West Des Moines IT has provided anything yet to you, Craig, is that? Yeah. So I would recommend waiting till we hear from the IT department, what specifically could be added to enhance both of the board, the council's experience here in the room, and then consider it.
And that's exactly what we were talking about, and that's what I would like to pursue. And as I kind of wrote a little note to Rob here during the meeting, I said, is there any other things like personnel costs? They provide, you're right, West Des Moines IT is providing somebody here to be here in the back room to do all of this. Do we want to look at some kind of remuneration for him as well, or for the city there for those costs? So that's a possibility. It'll be up to see what we get back from the city of West Des Moines, but I think that would be something, this room's a valuable asset, and I think we should support it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Well, we'll wait for that. Rob will keep us posted.
I will.
All right, very good. Anything further, Rob?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay. Business from the floor. Anything from anybody in the audience? Okay. Well, our next meeting will be again here on Thursday, September 8th at 9 a.m. and we are adjourned.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could I hold that adjournment, please?
Go ahead.
Number one, Sally passed these
yes.
out. Can we
forgot
talk
to
about that?
We forgot to. Items for discussion. Back to that again. Sally, you want to just describe a little bit about what you got going? Oh, okay.
What you have before you is, I do have some extra copies if anybody else needs one. Does anybody else need one? Does everybody have a copy? Okay. This is an amendment to the council's bylaws in reference to, since we are communicating electronically, we were added that information, thought it should be added into the bylaws. And the information that I've put into a proposed amendment regarding this is in red and underlined. I would, appreciate any comments, what you think, any input on that. If there is none, then this will be put on the September agenda for final approval in the in our council bylaws.
Okay. So if anybody has any suggestions for Sally, you can get a hold of her directly. And but this will come back in September for approval with whatever changes might be also requested.
One more. I think with the discussions today, I think the council needs to meet before September 8th to work on the definition of consolidation. And there's 3 weeks in essence before our September 8th meeting. And I would hate to come to that meeting without some definitive guidance for Mr. Benson as he moves forward with the administrative rules proposals.
Wasn't that the workshop yesterday?
Yeah, Bob, the only thing I would want to clarify is that the way the rules are now and how they're going to be submitted is what I reaffirmed in the letter to them that their chair and vice chair have already received. So I guess now you're saying that regardless of the letter, we still want to get together and maybe save and want changes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If we continue just to approve the applications that come in without any further definition, I mean, what have we done here? I mean, I guess I thought that's what the purpose of yesterday's meeting was, yes, but did we come to any conclusions? No. Further, we pretty well muddied up the water even more.
Okay. Rob.
With response to that, Bob, I agree with you on that. However, I don't know if it's a valid point anymore. We've voted, we've set precedent. I don't know if defining consolidation means anything anymore.
I know where you're going, Bob, but at this point in time, my recommendation would be is that we move forward with the way what we're doing, approving how we believe that it's okay to be approved, and if there's an issue that still needs to be addressed, I think that's for the next session. That's my personal feeling. But if there is an overwhelming desire here from council members, by nods of head or whatever to me, we can surely have another meeting before September 8th. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Rob Dennard.
Second.
Rob, 2. Okay, motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Thank you, everybody.